Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Hello. Can you hear me all right? Okay. The lights are always such in this auditorium that I can't see anybody. But having looked around, I know you're all there somewhere, and I can't help but welcome you all to this wonderful evening of color. My staff is so excited about this. It's just been a wonderful experience, and to get to this point always kind of gives me chills. So all that work and effort comes to fruition in this night. My name is Nancy Gwynn, and I'm the director of the Smithsonian Libraries. And I'm happy also to introduce one of our board members who's with us, Catherine Neville. Catherine, could you stand up? I think you were over there somewhere. I think people can see you. She wasn't expecting that, so. There are lots of new faces here, which is always such a pleasure to see new people to come and see one of our exhibits. But because of that, I want to tell you something about the Smithsonian Libraries, which is the producer of this exhibit, even though we're in the Natural History Museum. The libraries are a separate administrative unit here in the Smithsonian, with 21 libraries located throughout the 19 museums and 9 research centers of the Smithsonian, spreading from the Republic of Panama, where Smithsonian has a Tropical Research Institute, to New York City and the Cooper Hewitt. However much I'd like to see a tower on the mall with the Smithsonian Libraries emblazoned on it, in fact, we have no separate library facility here in DC. So we're fortunate that the museums allow us to use their multiple spaces for our activities, as the Natural History Museum is doing this evening, and I certainly thank them for it. Now, taken all together, because we operate as a single library, we have about 2 million volumes in the collection dispersed throughout the place, as well, of course, as many digital journals and databases. We're also a creator of digital products, having scanned thousands of our own publications, as well as creating online exhibits, specialized databases, and other tools to support the research, exhibition, and education programs of the Smithsonian. And while the large numbers of Smithsonian research and affiliated staff are definitely our primary clientele, we feel an obligation as part of a great national public institution to share our treasured and unique collections and resources nationally and internationally through our website at library.si.edu. That's library.si.edu, and through educational activities and public programming. So if you're here in town for more than just a day, I want to draw your attention to several other Smithsonian Libraries exhibitions. In our gallery in the National Museum of American History, which is right next door, you'll find Fantastic Worlds, Science and Fiction, 1780 to 1910, a delightful journey showing how new scientific discoveries influenced fiction writers such as Rudyard Kipling, Jules Verne, and H.G. Wells. That's our public gallery, a much bigger space than our two cases here, and is one of our most popular public spaces. Oops, I always hate it when they put the terminal or the laptop right here on top, and I'm afraid I'm going to push something and give you too much of a preview. In the National Museum of African Art appears Artists, Books, and Africa, an unusual and fascinating look at African influences on creative and imaginative works in book form. And in the library that serves the Smithsonian American Art Museum, an exhibition called Come Together, American Artists Respond to Al Mutanabi Street, shows the support of artists to the March 5th, 2007 car bomb that exploded on Al Mutanabi Street, which is the historic center of bookselling in Baghdad and which had been the heart and soul of the literary and intellectual community there for centuries. This is part of a book arts festival that's being held here in D.C. to commemorate that tragic event. Tonight's focus, however, is color. I know you'll enjoy tonight's lecture as well as the reception and exhibition outside, and we're supremely grateful to Benjamin Moore, our lead sponsor, and the Shepherd Color Company for generously providing the funds for both the exhibition and the complimentary educational and other public programs that will be taking place throughout the year. So watch your announcements for those. With the Benjamin Moore representatives, Carl Minchew and Kelly Sinatra, and the Shepherd representative, Lori Huber, please rise to receive our gratitude in applause. Lori's in the middle. On its own accord, the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum produced for sale a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle called Color in a New Light, which is available from the museum shop there or out here in the reception area. You probably saw it tonight for $13.99. I have this puzzle spread out on a table at home, and believe me, it's not as easy as it looks. I must especially thank Susan Frampton, our exhibition coordinator, whose creativity and excellent project management skills have ensured the success of all our exhibitions in recent years. Is Susan here tonight? No. Oh, that's too bad. And I also want to thank all the other SIL staff responsible for fundraising, public information, developing the online version, conservation of the items in the cases, and of course the Smithsonian's exhibition office, which actually did the design and production. It takes a village, even for a small exhibition like this one, to make it a success. But the most important person here is Jen Cohlman Bracchi, Senior Reference Librarian at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum, whose brainchild this exhibition is, and whose commitment and hard work on top of an already all-consuming job has made it happen. Jen, would you please join me at the podium to talk about the exhibition and introduce our speaker?
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for championing the Smithsonian Libraries exhibition program. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a great honor to have this opportunity, and I'm really excited to share this exhibition with you. But first, I just want to thank a few of the many people that made this exhibition possible. Thanks to Susan Frampton, unfortunately not here, but she really challenged us to come up with a topic that spanned across all of our libraries. I also thank her for her support of the idea of color and for guiding a novice curator through the complex process of creating an exhibition. Thanks to Mary Augusta Thomas for helping me find my way through this huge topic with her sage advice to let the books tell the story. Thanks to Stephen Van Dyke for his encouragement, support, and curatorial words of wisdom. Thank you to Daria Wingreen Mason, Carrie Smith, and Paul McCutcheon, who all helped shape the content that is in this exhibition. Thanks to Smithsonian Exhibitions Office, Kristen Orr for her beautiful design concept, and Rosemary Regan for her expert wordsmithing. Thanks to the support provided by the Shepherd Color Company, and a very special thanks to our lead sponsor, Benjamin Moore. There could not have been a more perfect match for this topic. So researching the topic of color was a fascinating journey full of surprise and intrigue. The cast of characters includes some of our greatest minds, from Aristotle to Albers, Newton, Goethe. Each book in the exhibition tells a story about color that could be an entire exhibition of its own. The creation of camouflage, the first steps towards quantum theory, the development of our modern-day printing process, and the industrialization of chemistry with synthetic dyes, which paved the way to advances in modern medicine and explosives and photography and plastics. So all of these achievements somehow stemmed from the result of studying color. I'd now like to ask you to participate in a color exercise. Please direct your attention to these red and white circles. Focus on the center of the red circle and keep it there until I tell you otherwise. As you stare at this circle, I'm going to share some thoughts on color by Joseph Albers from his Interaction of Color. In visual perception, a color is almost never seen as it really is, as it physically is. This fact makes color the most relative medium in art. In order to use color effectively, it is necessary to recognize that color deceives continually. I'd now like to ask you to shift your focus to the center of the white circle. Is it still white? Our understanding of color has come a long way, but much remains a mystery. There is no telling what future discoveries await as we continue to explore this fascinating topic and inspire others to see color in a new light. Now I'd like to introduce you to Carl Minchew, Vice President of Color Innovation and Design for Benjamin Moore. I had the pleasure of meeting Carl last summer. I met his whole color team, and I knew I was in the presence of a real rock star of the color world. Carl's understanding of color is at a level few achieve. Over his 40-year career at Benjamin Moore, he has served in many management roles, including manufacturing, product development, sustainability, and color technology, to name a few. He is responsible for developing and managing the company's color technology research group, as well as the selection and development of color systems, software, and related equipment. Collaborating with private partners on a number of innovative projects, Carl is a co-inventor of several color technology patents, including the Pocket Palette, a unique electronic handheld color reader. Carl was an early advocate for environmental responsibility and a sustainable production technique. In addition, he has been intimately involved with product and facility compliance and was an industry delegate during the regulatory negotiation that led to the National Architectural and Industrial Maintenance Coatings VOC rule. And like so many of the great minds featured in Color in a New Light, Carl began his career with chemistry. So now let's give a warm welcome to color expert Carl Minchew.
Thank you, Jen. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. After that, time is up. We can't do any more than that. Thanks, Jen. That's pretty amazing. It's been quite a ride. I can't tell you how exciting it is for me to be here. I've been coming to the Smithsonian since I was that big, and I've always been a bit in awe of it. The elephant, the blue whale, Air and Space, when that opened, obviously, it just was amazing to me. And so to be here and to be a little tiny part of it is exciting for me. We're going to change direction a little bit and talk about color trends and how we do that. Benjamin Moore does a color trend palette each year, and we do a color of the year. It's not a commercial for us, but we thought it would be interesting to share some insight as to how that process happens and what the steps are. People ask about that all the time. So let's begin with the fact, what is a color trend? I mean, what are we really trying to accomplish with that? And I think there are probably two things. One is the obvious, that in fact, colors come and go. Things are popular and then they're not, and then they're popular again, maybe in a slightly different way. And so if we're going to be in the color field and we're going to recommend colors and make colors for people, it's incumbent on us to at least understand how that's working. And we thought, well, we're going to do the work anyway, let's share it with people. There is another more pragmatic piece of this, and that is when people Google color trends, we'd like them to find our website when they do that. So there is a pragmatic piece to it, and I don't think we want to ignore that. But the way we go about it is fun, actually. It's the greatest thing. In fact, I tell people all the time, I don't tell my CEO this because I want him to think I've just got my nose to the grindstone, but I actually have the best job in the company. I work with an incredibly talented, passionate group of people who love each other mostly and agree with each other often, but not always. And they are just built to do color work. And there's nothing better than working with people who have passion for what they do. And I think the Smithsonian is that kind of place as well. I could feel it as we walk through the halls and through some of the back areas here today. So we send this group out into the world, sometimes to really nice places like Milan and Paris, occasionally Korea, Japan, other parts of the world. And we do a lot of introspection, or a lot of kind of paperwork, if you will, where we, you would not believe how many magazines are sacrificed in the interest of doing color trend work. Because what we do are called tear sheets, and maybe some of you do this as well. Here we take great care of ancient and very valuable books. So I hope if you do that job here, you won't be horrified when I tell you we rip up magazines. And not in a pretty way either. I mean, we just tear them apart. And then we spread those pictures out. We go to these shows, as I mentioned, in Europe and other parts of the world. And we don't ignore the United States, by the way. A lot of great stuff happening here, Canada and other countries. We take those pictures and we print them out. And all of this goes on a table. And our team gathers around the table, and maybe they'll gestate for a few days and kind of see which pictures sort of make the cut, which ones are duplicates, and we really don't need them. And over time, in a short period of time, a story, a narrative starts to evolve. Pictures start clustering together. Wow, we saw a lot of mauve, heaven forbid, that's not it. A lot of teal, not that either. But they begin to group together. And from that, we begin to say, yeah, I saw a lot of that, and I think this is what's happening. So we really do try and understand why we're seeing what we're seeing. And that's the essence of what we want to share with the market and our customers. So that begins the process of the color trend. We then take that narrative, distill it down. Usually for trend, we'll pick about 23, 24 colors, and we will divide them into 3 or 4 or 5 color stories. So each one has a story. And then we'll actually build a little narrative about each one. So I don't know if I'm violating anything here. You can't see the logos from here, but I just want to show you what it looks like. So this is what we end up with, is a palette of colors. But through the book are photographs. And in the photographs, we actually have in mind a hypothetical person or family who live in that environment and who are living with those colors that we saw. And we use that to tell a story about why those colors are, we think, useful and important, and to try and convey some ideas about how to use those colors when you're decorating. Interesting things you might not have thought of. So how does all that play out? In 2014, everybody was using gray. And they still are, to be honest with you. A lot of gray out there, and that's fine. But we really felt that we were seeing a change, a move, some lighter colors creeping, a little bit of color. Gray, but with a hint or a nuance of color. And not a lot, because it was like people were sticking their toes in the water. You know, they didn't want to do it all at once. And the color of the year that we came up with was breath of fresh air. Because what we sensed in 14 was a movement to kind of like put it down. And now you're hearing all about it, you know, like put down your cell phone. Focus on the people around you instead of that. Just take a step back, take a deep breath, let it go, and be in the moment. And we kind of sensed that. And that breath of fresh air was one of our colors that rose to the occasion. And it became the spokesperson, if you will, for our color trend that year. And we had 4 stories that we told in the form of these various rooms that we photographed. In 2015, we went through a similar exercise, of course, and we saw a little more color creeping in. And we probably could have done blue again, because frankly, blue, like if around the world, if you say, what's your favorite color? Blue is the answer you will get most often. It just is that way. We didn't want to do that, but we did see a movement toward being a little more bold, a little more courageous. Maybe we saw something going on environmentally. And so we picked a green. The green was Guilford green. And it's kind of a silvery gray green. So we aren't going all the way to bright color yet, but it was more colorful than the breath of fresh air. So we saw a little progression there. And that was our 2015 color of the year. And we told a story with that one too. And the story we told with that one, we really wanted to use that platform to educate a bit about color. So we talked about using monochromatic color schemes. Now most people, if you don't think about it, if you hadn't thought about it, would say monochromatic sounds pretty boring to me. I don't know that I want anything to do with it. You know, it's all one color. But the reality is, by playing with contrast and depth and tone, by nuancing the color, you can actually tell a very rich, complex story, and all in the same basic hue. And we thought that was very interesting, so we shared that through our color trend and through our color of the year, Guilford green. So by 2016, we're pretty much out of ideas. We traveled all over the world. We tore up a bunch of magazines. And our creative director, Ellen O'Neill, and I won't mention everyone on the team, but I will mention Ellen. She's the driving force behind much of this. She came back from Paris and she said, "You're going to hate what I'm going to say." And I said, "The only thing I would hate is if you came back and said you don't have any ideas." And she said, "No, I have an idea. I have an idea." She said, "I think the color of the year is white." And I said, "What?" Go back to Paris. Take another crack at that. So we talked it through, and I knew, you know, right away, white's not a color. White is sort of a cop-out. Yes, white is what we sell the most of, and most paint companies probably sell the most of white. But the more we talked about it, and particularly there was one building in Paris, and maybe you're familiar with it. It was the Louis Vuitton building. A fabulous structure, basically all in white, with exposed trusses and beams, and using white in a very clever way because it's so many curved surfaces. And the wonderful thing that she noted about that was maybe it was all the same color, but it didn't look like it, because it was in shadow, it was in shade, it was curved, there were highlights. Sometimes it was against wood and sometimes against steel. Sometimes they would put a matte finish next to a glossy finish, and that looks like different colors. So they managed to take this white and managed to do a lot of things with it. And when we understood that story, we said, okay, this is a story we can tell. And that's the color card cover that I was showing you. This is the Color Trend 2016, which is still current. And we created stories for the photo shoot around different artists. So we had a ceramicist, and the ceramicist decorated her place in a certain way. We had a museum curator, and the museum curator decorated the place in a certain way. And we went through those narratives. And what we try and do is tell a story, but we also try and educate, and we also try and tap into something that's happening. Now, since then, maybe it's just, self-fulfilling prophecy, I don't know. We're seeing white everywhere. I mean, it was already there, iPhone and all that, but everywhere. And the topper was when the Pope visited the United States, and Ellen said, "He's wearing white!" He made it into our sizzle reel, but we can't use it publicly. So we have a great time with it, but we also hope that, I'm not deluding myself, we're not doing a public service, but we're being true to our passion for color by sharing what we understand, by maybe opening some eyes to things that they hadn't thought about, and creating a dialogue. And what we love is you don't have to agree with us, as long as you don't ignore us, have an opinion. Your opinion's as good as anybody's. When we do this, we know we're not a fashion house, and we don't try and be. We understand that the role of an architectural coating is a little different than a scarf or a fine piece of furniture or a throw rug or something like that. We sort of need to be in the environment, and we need to help you be comfortable in that environment. So what we need to be is a really good partner or backdrop to that fashionable color, to that acid green that you just got to have some of in your house, but you don't know where to put it. So buy a pillow, buy a rug. The walls maybe aren't going to necessarily be that, but if you want that, we can do that too. We can get that for you, if that's what you really, really want. But we try and be the environment that the really far out colors, the really forecast colors, fashion colors can live in comfortably. We also don't want to make you feel stupid the year after you used one of these color trend colors or color of the year, that somehow the next year you're out of date. That's okay, fashions change and we get that. That's not our job. We want you to feel like you made a smart decision in 2014 when you used Breath of Fresh Air, and what you'll find is Guilford Green works great with that. And you'll find, obviously, the white naturally works great with that as well. What are we going to do in 2017? I can't tell you. You'll have to invite me back. No word on that. So all of this is, again, how we take what we know and what we have a passion for and sharing it with our constituency, if you will, users of our product, people who are interested in color, whether they use our product or not. And when the opportunity came along to sponsor this exhibit, I was actually the first one that saw it. And I said, man, I just want to do this. It was the Smithsonian Libraries. I really wanted to be part of that. It was such a nice fit with light and color and the history of color and the science of color and bringing that together, art and science. So I did what any wise person does. I didn't do a frontal attack. I enlisted the help of a coworker who was Kelly. And I said, Kelly, you should go tell the chief marketing officer that this would be a great idea. Because if it was a bad idea, she would take the hit, and if it was a great idea, I'd be right behind her saying, that was me. And it worked out, and I'm really, really pleased that it did. I can't tell you how delighted I am to be able to share a few minutes with you, a few thoughts. I'm going to hang around, I guess, if we have some questions. I don't know, are we going to do that now or after? Now? Okay, so with all of that, I am going to say thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you for being here. And whatever you do, go out there and enjoy and think about color just a little bit more than you did when you came in. Thank you.
So we will open it up for a few questions now. Anybody have any questions? We got one right there. It's coming, it's coming.
Thank you for your talk tonight. My favorite Benjamin Moore color is raccoon fur. And
Great color.
And every time I use it, I wonder how you come up with the names for your paints. If you could just talk about that process a little bit and how I can help.
Yeah. You know, it's a great question. So we get that question all the time because somehow that's the thing people leap to. So before about 2000, 1999, 2000, we had color names forever, but we have these big systems with thousands of colors in them. We didn't name those colors. They had numbers, 1680, 1520, whatever. Not very romantic. And so our designers at the time, and I was involved in a different part of the business. I was really in the technical, I was wearing my technical hat. And they came and said, we want to name all the colors. I said, there's 5,000 colors. How are you going to do that? And how are you going to keep up? Blah, blah, blah. Terrible idea. And I really fought it and lost, thank goodness. And so now we have like 10,000 color names in 3 languages that we have to maintain and not duplicate and not trample on people's trademarks and all that kind of stuff. But the question is, so how do we do the colors? It depends on the project. We don't introduce new colors every day. So there's a kind of a misconception perhaps there that we sit in there and come up with new colors every day. We don't do that. We have about 5,000 core colors that we work with, and we do a lot with those. When we need a new color, we introduce it. Occasionally, we do a new collection, and that requires new color names, and it depends on the collection. So we did recently some work with Colonial Williamsburg. Can I say that? Is that okay? Okay, Colonial Williamsburg. Nice people just down the road. And in that case, it was kind of easy to name the colors because they were all historical references to the residences in Colonial Williamsburg. Very straightforward. More recently, we made a system for one of our brands. So this is like 800 colors. And we actually sent requests and welcomed employees to send colors in. And so about, I would say, 1/3 of the colors in that system are named by our own employees. And they get a little certificate saying they named a color, and we thank them very much. And the rest we do pretty much with our own internal group, or we will bring other groups in. So we'll bring Kelly in, we'll bring other people in our circle. We actually look at crowdsourcing names, and our chief legal counsel, his head actually started bulging. Ownership and blah, 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 blah. So we haven't given up on that idea, but maybe we'll come back, and maybe you will get a chance to name a color someday. Great question. We started working on 2017 the day we launched 2016. So it takes at least a year. And in fact, we are thinking a little bit, even more than a year out. But we started working in earnest before we launched it in October. We started in earnest in November, thinking about, okay, how's this going to work? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? We didn't pick a color. We don't press ourselves to do that too far in advance. But it takes quite a while to produce the merchandise that goes with it. So we need to know within 6 or 8 weeks from now what it's going to be, but what we don't know yet today. What does it take to do that? Well, first of all, be careful what you ask for, because a lot of us, like a lot of companies do, we wear pedometers now. You know, it's worth money. You know, like get a better insurance rate or something if you wear a pedometer and get a lot of steps. These guys are logging like 20,000 steps a day, which is about 5-6 miles when they go to these shows. So this is not your leisurely take 10 steps and have a latte. That might be my style, but it's not theirs. It's hard work, but it takes a combination of passion. That's first and foremost, because we can't teach you passion. You either have it or you don't. It takes a good sense of style and design. And again, we can teach you something about that, but if you're not interested in it, it's hard to push that. And it really does take some technical knowledge. If you don't have the patience to understand simultaneous contrast or how these colors will work together and why they do what they do, then you're going to have a hard time executing your ideas in a commercial industrial environment, which is, at the end of the day, what we are. So it takes that combination, and not a lot of people are good at all 3 of those things.
Can you talk about how
Yes, there are a number of forecasting organizations. There's the Color Marketing Group, which some of you may be familiar with. There's CAUS, CAUS, Color Association of the U.S. There's the Mix. There's, I want to say HGTV. What am I thinking of? WGSN. There are a number of these. And I mean, we read the books just like everybody else. We're not going to stick our heads in the sand and pretend like they don't exist. But we really do try and forge our own trail. It probably wouldn't be very satisfying to my team if I went in and said, you know what, we're just going to buy the $5,000 book from the Mix, flip through it, pick a color. We need to know what's going on. We need to know other opinions about what's happening. But we really do our own work with our own antenna, understanding who our customers are and what they're doing, and kind of year over year who we are and what we're doing. So we really do it organically and internally for the most part.
In the center, just behind the person. Yeah, go ahead.
You said black was your #1. What are the next three, and how have they changed in the last 10 years?
It's a great question because everybody's thinking, wow, it must look like a harlequin costume when you go from year to year. You know, sometimes I got to deliver the hard news. The hard news is in 50 years, or in probably 50 years, that top 50 colors has changed very little. Because you're talking about top-selling colors. And so it's driven by spaces like this, huge spaces with huge amounts of paint on them, and they tend to gravitate to kind of neutral, not quite white, not quite beige, not quite gray, a lot of that. And you can go back to the 50s and 60s. But what you do see is not maybe the top 50, but somewhere in the bottom colors, or maybe the next 200 colors, you see some movement there. So it goes from more muted support colors to brighter support colors. So that's where you see the change. So you really have to look a little bit deeper. And when we look at those top 10, 20, 30 colors, it's actually almost disappointing. They really don't move that much in our business, in our world.
Do you work at all with Pantone? And if so, what was that conversation like when you told them we're going to have our own color of the year?
Yeah, it was good until it got really bad. We respect Pantone, and Pantone does a different job than we do. And they're really serving the graphic arts and fashion industry, and I think they would agree with me. I don't like telling you what their job is. They should tell you what their job is. But I think there's a separation there. And so we're in our lane. We're not trying to dictate fashion. We're really not that company. But we respect what they do. They're a very smart company, and they do a lot of great work, and we know those folks pretty well. But we don't collaborate with them. We don't see quite how that fits together other than in kind of the bigger realm of lining up everybody's colors of the year.
This question's for both of you. I think it's going to be a little harder for Jen to answer as curator.
Yeah.
What's your favorite book in the Color in the New Light show?
Ooh, that's really good. To give you time to think.
That's so tough.
I want you to go first so that I can glom off it.
There was a list of 200 books that I had to cut down into what is in the show, so there's so many to choose from. One of my favorites, though, is Colorido by LeBlanc, which actually is in our American Art and Portrait Gallery library. This book is exceedingly rare. Only 15 were ever known to be printed. It's from 1722, and it basically is the first documentation of the primary colors mixing into secondary colors. And if that wasn't enough, it also laid out the instructions for our modern day printing process using basically CMYK, which is what we still do today. So that book blew my mind, and it was so exciting to find that we had it.
Wow, it is so tough. I've always, I have on my iPad actually, a copy of Joseph Albert's book. And so I admire him, and I admire how he really stepped through art into the science of the perception of color, because it really is beastly complicated how we perceive color and all the pitfalls in that. So So that'd be probably my easy answer. But the truth is, I've never met a color book I didn't like. So you know, every time you show me one, that's probably my favorite one right then. Absolutely. Great, unbelievable stuff there, things I had not seen and really hadn't been aware of until they were shown to me. So I've been missing a lot.
Hi, Spirit, we've enjoyed your talk very much. I have a question. Does industry still use natural pigments, or most of the pigments you use from synthetic sources? Do you still use like red earth and?
Yeah, great question. And pretty much they're all industrially produced materials. A lot of it is iron oxide of various types. So when we talk about these, we can make yellows and browns and reds and even very dark blacks, and they're all fundamentally iron oxide, and the process for making that is to take iron and oxidize it, which of course is rust. So it's not natural. It's done in a process because we need to make the same thing every time. And if you go back to those artisanal days where paint maker's job was literally to, you know, get the stone and grind it down and then put oil in it and grind it a little more. The great thing was it was artisanal, it was hand wrought, you couldn't make very much of it at a time, and it wasn't very consistent. Sometimes it held up great, sometimes not so great. So we do use commercial, industrially produced materials. We're very sensitive, obviously, to materials that are made in a responsible manner, but we understand that being part of that has an impact on the environment. But we want the consistency, the quality. We want to make sure that we're making something that people can depend on.
So maybe one more question, and then the food's getting cold out there. There's one in the middle. Wait for the microphone, please.
So how hard is it for you to go into a room anywhere? I mean, so for instance, if you're a set designer and you go to the theater, you see the set design rather than the actors themselves. So what's it like for you everywhere in the world? Are you constantly seeing color, or do you shut it out, or what do you do?
I do notice it, but I rarely walk into a space and say, wow, that's really horrible. I'm more likely to say, wow, it's really, you know, interesting, and try and understand, well, was there some thought behind it, or was it truly random? But some of the most interesting things are just old, beat-up plaster walls that are, you know, delaminating, and you can see the age and the history coming through. And to me, sometimes that's the most interesting stuff, and you can't really duplicate it. It just has to be where it is. So, you know, I think everything has the potential to delight you. You just have to have the eyes for it.
Thank you.
I think we've only begun to plumb Carl's knowledge and information about color, and so I hope that you'll ask your remaining questions of him out in the exhibition area. And I know that Jen has many answers for your questions, and she can tell you a lot about the exhibit. So please join me in thanking again Carl and Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
And please join us outside the auditorium for the reception.
Awesome.